oh my god, did this book make me question people's taste? Being an active member of the Bookstagram community, I came across two very loved and highly praised fantasy books, and I thought, of course I'm gonna read them. Why wouldn't I? And lo and behold, they were the worst books I have ever read in my life. So, I'm gonna tell you about them because I read them so you don't have to, and I need to vent. Hi, I'm Lara. I'm a bookworm and translator, and I read more books in my life than I can count. And today we're gonna talk about two of the worst books I have ever read in my life. The first one is Gothicana by Rue Nix. So, this book this book, I came across it on BookTok and Bookstagram, and it was so hyped up and so known, and people were fangirling all over the place about this book that I thought it has to be one of the best books I'm about to read in my entire life. And the premise is promising, honestly. The storyline, the mood, the setting, it's a dark academia, and I was really interested and curious, to be honest. So I picked up this book, and at first glance, it looks promising. I mean, it has this gothic, alluring look to it. But then I actually started to read it, and oh my god, did this book make me question people's tastes? Let's get into it because I really want to prevent you from making the biggest mistake of your life by ever reading this book. It had the worst writing style I have ever come across. The style is so poor, it uses such an infantile and vulgar language. It felt like I was reading a 13-year-old's poorly written Wattpad fanfic entry, and it gave me so much anxiety. There were typos everywhere. And I mean, it's fine if you come across, especially if it's a self-published book, it's fine if you come across some typos, but the book was filled with them. There was one page that had maybe like 7 words on it. I swear, it was a total of 7 words, and somehow the author had misspelled happy. I mean, it felt like the author hadn't even made the effort to reread their own book, and it felt like, why should I read this book if the author doesn't feel it's worth rereading? There are spelling mistakes everywhere. The author sometimes even used certain words that I'm actually sure they don't know what the word means, because they used the word in a completely wrong context, and it would leave me wondering, like, what do they mean? Why is this word used here? And then I would realize that the author probably thinks the word means something else, and that's why they use it here, because based on the entire context of the paragraph or the page, the word makes absolutely no sense. Like, to give you an example of the poor writing style, okay? This is an actual passage that you read in the book, okay? Just hear me out. Dr. Carey was one of her scariest professors in the semester. Point. He had down-tilted dark eyes and a fierce white beard, and he was strict. Point. One time, a girl got late to the class, and he made her stand outside in the corridor in full view until she had gone red in the face from humiliation. Point. Students were scared to ask him a question. Point. But it didn't end there. Point. He also seemed to enjoy looking at young girls too much in the class. All 18-year-old first years except an older Corvino. This sounds like a first grade essay. Like, you asked a first grader to describe one of their professors, or a typical day in kindergarten. Another example. Corvina leaned against the wall for support, a glass of drink in her hand. A glass of drink. My favorite kind. You get the point. Second issue I had with this book was that the setting was so underdeveloped. The world was so underdeveloped. At first, it had really promising, like setting and mood and all that, and like this university, very gothic, up on a hill, secluded. So naturally, I was intrigued. But then I realized that beyond the initial setting of the place, nothing was developed. The world was so poorly built that it made zero sense. For example, at a university where everyone is an adult, they forbid them to use their phones, and they're not allowed to use the one phone on campus except for emergencies, or if they allow them to. I mean, they're adults. Why wouldn't they be able to use their phones at a university? And I get that the author was trying to create this eerie, secluded, like gothic ambience, but it didn't make sense. Like, it felt that there was no effort put into actually building a world that makes sense and that could still create the effect and the ambience that the author wanted. Also, the plot was so predictable. It was so predictable. At first, it seemed interesting. It seemed promising. I mean, but then I realized that beyond the initial idea that had potential, the author did not put in any effort to actually develop a plot that made sense. There were so many plot holes. Like, I mean, during the first half or less of the book, the first third of the book, the author was maybe putting in effort to build a plot line. And after that, it felt like the author completely just gave up and stopped trying to create something that actually worked and just started to throw random events and people into it. And it just felt so chaotic and so juvenile at the same time. And additionally, the plot holes are never addressed. If you thought the ending would give you some answers to your questions, you thought wrong, because the book ends on the very climactic ending scene, and there are so many questions up in the air. You think, okay, definitely there will be something after this to explain it, but nope. The author just jumps into an epilogue with a time jump, a time difference, and you never actually understand what happened. Like, you never understand how everything got sorted, or who did what, or why did that happen, or who was this person. It's just left out in the open with the most chaotic ending and so many plot holes. If you can tell, it gave me anxiety. Additionally, this book really poorly handled the issues of mental health. It felt so dismissive and reductive of mental health. It felt like a poorly informed or misinformed person with zero cultural sensitivity trying to talk about some very heavy mental health issues. The main character, she has a history, or her parents have schizophrenia, both of them. And the way that the characters, the main characters, potential mental health issues were handled, it was so crass. And there's this scene, I mean, I'm sorry, but there's this scene where he's like, they're engaging in some activity, some smutty activity, and during this, while he fingers her, he asks her to tell him about her mother's schizophrenia. I mean, what? How in the world is this the proper setting to talk about something so serious? It just was baffling to me. The main characters, they were so poorly developed. They were so lackluster. I don't know. This book was so bad. It was so bad. The male character is a psychopath. I think the MMC. He's definitely a psychopath. His mannerisms and the words he uses and the expressions and his possessiveness. It's not the hot possessiveness that we value in our broody male characters. It's borderline psychotic. Like, the first time they were intimate, it felt like it bordered on a violation, not a steamy, like aggressive scene. It felt very disturbing, all of it. And also, like, the development of their romance, there's no development. There's literally no development. She meets him, she instantly lusts after him. And I mean, we get it. That's not the issue. It's just so surface level and juvenile and infantile and vulgar and disturbing, because he comes off as such a predator, a psychopath, and she's just an idiot. I'm sorry. And I did not at all enjoy their romance. The dialogue between them while they're building up this tension and this romance is so cringe. I've never read more cringe dialogue between two characters. Like, at some point, like, I couldn't. Like, at some point while they're being intimate and his member is inside her, he says to her something like, "This is madness," or "You are my madness," or something like that. And I swear, if someone said that to me while they were inside me, I would laugh so hard. Their would snap right in half. I can't. It was so crude and cringe. And anyway, rant over. And also, I felt like a lot of the descriptions and the scenes and everything, they were self-insertions by the author. So many expressions, I mean, like the way she describes the characters, or like how the main character, when she sees him, she's like, "Oh, this is the first time I lost after a real man, not just a man in a book." Anyway, this book was heinous. And I don't say this lightly, because I don't like to attack books or to criticize, because I mean, I get the effort that goes into writing a book. It's not easy. But this book felt like no effort was put into it. Like, it was just typed up on ChatGPT, and there was zero effort put into actually reviewing or making this book decent. So never read this book. Now on to the second book, Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. To be fair, this book wasn't as bad as Gothicana. It wasn't a bad book. It just, I think, wasn't properly executed. So let me tell you about this book. This is the first book I have ever DNF'd in my life. And I felt kind of bad for DNFing it because it was promising. It just lost me. I had heard so much about this author because apparently she has a few famous series. I think Atlas something, Atlas Six, I think. Anyway, so I saw her books all over Bookstagram and BookTok, and I felt like, okay, so if she's that known, then probably her books are good. And I came across this book. I was at the airport and I went to the bookstore, obviously, and I got this book. And the premise is very interesting. And when I started the book, honestly, like the writing was good. I enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the characters, the dialogue, everything. The writing was polished and she used very eloquent language, you know? And I was reading it. But my issue with this book is that since the start of the book, they all hint and talk about this game that the gods or the immortals play, and this game, and it's very shrouded in mystery. And I get it at first, like she's building the mystery and the hype. And so throughout the entire book, they talk about this game and they hint at it, but we don't know what it is because we're not supposed to know yet. And it's a very high stakes game and it's dangerous, and the mortals shouldn't play the game because it's too risky, it's fated. And they keep hinting at this game, and the game is a crucial part of the book, you know? It's like literally the center, the most pivotal element of the story, and we still don't know what the game is. And we read and we read, and I got to, I think, more than halfway into the book, and I still had no idea what the game was. And at that point, I started to feel a bit impatient because it felt like it stopped being suspenseful and it just became vague. It became obnoxiously vague. And I'm like, what is this game? Just tell us. And I lost interest. I honestly lost interest. This book couldn't keep my interest because it was just too vague. And yeah, that was my issue with this book. And some people actually like it, but after having seen the reviews on Gothicana and how much people like that, and having read that, I don't really trust people's opinions anymore. I'm sorry. But I mean, this book, for me, it was the first book I've ever DNF'd, but I can see how maybe some people would enjoy it because the writing was good. It just, for me, it wasn't enough to keep me hooked until I actually find out what the game was and like finish the book. And so, yeah, these were the two worst books for me of 2025. And I really hope that these kinds of books never find me again. And on that note, I really want to comment on how concerning it is that people hype books up so much on Bookstagram and BookTok, and you think they're going to be the best books on earth until you actually read them and you find out that they're horrible. That's concerning to me. Is this the level of literature we've gotten to? And I don't want to sound elitist, but I mean, it just shows you the power of social media to boost things just because the masses think they're good. Doesn't actually mean they're good. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on these books. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.